So Rebirth on PC is here, and this provides the opportunity to be able to play this game on a handheld PC, like of course the Steam Deck or something like the ROG Ally. And what's more is Rebirth is actually officially optimized for Steam Deck. Right there, we can see the green Steam Deck tick. It's pretty hard to imagine Rebirth running on a handheld PC, and not that there isn't some compromises that absolutely need to be made here, but sure, you can definitely have about a 30 FPS 720p experience of this game completely portably. You are going to have to tinker around with some settings here though to get the performance to a point where it's both visible and playable. For some reason, when I booted up Rebirth for the first time on my Steam Deck, a bunch of the graphics options were set to high, along with even the frame rate being set to 60. Now this could be the game loading in some of my graphics settings from my main PC, as I'm using my cloud save here, but the Steam Deck is absolutely not going to be able to handle that. In order to get a pretty smooth experience here, we're gonna have to tone absolutely everything down to the lowest. For frame rate, we're gonna change that from 60 to 30. We're going to be using VSync instead of variable refresh rate, and temporal anti-aliasing upsampling for anti-aliasing method. The dynamic resolution settings though are the most important here. So our resolution is 720p, which is to be expected while playing a game on Steam Deck. Sometimes we can push it to 1080, but Rebirth here is most certainly a 720p experience. I found that it's best to crank this up to both 100% on both maximum and minimum if your Steam Deck is plugged in. If it's not, I would definitely recommend bumping the minimum down to 50%, just because the Steam Deck's battery life when playing something like Rebirth is incredibly short. We're looking at just under 2 hours at 100% charge. So bumping down the minimum resolution to 50% is going to help with the battery not draining as quick, and also not put as much strain onto the system while it's not plugged in. With these settings, it provides a pretty playable experience of Rebirth. It isn't a capped 30 frames per second, mind you. There are instances, especially while you're in combat and there's a lot of particle effects flying around the screen, where the frame rate will dip to, I saw a low of 23 frames per second. Also, if you're looking out towards large, wide open, expansive areas, then yeah, the frame rate's gonna drop down to like 25 frames. And prepare for your Steam Deck to sound like it's on the brink of giving up altogether, because yeah, this game absolutely pushes the fans to the limit. Clarity here is what takes the absolute biggest hit. This is the biggest compromise you're going to have to make. It's very similar to actually playing something like The Witcher 3 on Nintendo Switch. And this is why it's important to try have the dynamic resolution scaling set to 100% between both maximum and minimum. But considering that you are playing on a small 7-inch portable screen, I think this is something that you eventually just end up ignoring for the novelty factor of being able to play this game portably. And in a funny way, with the hit taken to the visual side of things, it really does come across as this being a truly portable port of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, I tried my best to try up the frame rate to that of 60 to see exactly how close to 60 we could achieve here on the Steam Deck. And yeah, sure, you can play this game above 30 frames. I saw a high of maybe 50 during specific moments where there isn't too much detail being presented. I'm basically just staring at a wall. For the most part, you're looking at about the high 30s. Now, in order to achieve this though, you absolutely have to set the dynamic resolution scaling to 33% between both maximum and minimum. The thing is, playing at 33% DRS completely ruins the visuals, like even furthermore. Artifacting is incredibly obvious, and so for the compromise you need to make in order to get high 30s to 40s on average for frame rate, I honestly don't think it's worth it. This can be incredibly distracting. The game runs fine enough at a capped 30 frames per second. And yes, although there are dips below that of 30, the experience is still completely playable. However, if you can bear the absolute blurriness that is presented when set to 33% DRS, then go hard. This will definitely provide a slightly higher frame rate. I think it's really impressive to see this, and huge shout out to Square Enix for going ahead and optimizing this game for the deck. This was something that unfortunately didn't happen with Final Fantasy XVI. This sort of gives you an idea as to what the game might potentially look like if both Remake and Rebirth end up coming to Nintendo Switch. For those who have been out of the loop, there is a rumor that is currently circulating that suggests that Square Enix plan on bringing the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy to Switch. Of course, there are a lot of doubters right now, especially looking at Rebirth, who are doubting that Rebirth could run on something like the Switch, but when you see Rebirth running here at 30 frames per second, albeit, sure, with some visual compromises, still it is that experience here running portably. This absolutely means that seeing these games on Switch 2 is completely viable. Because in case you don't know, right now we don't have the official spec sheet from Nintendo for Switch 2, but the rumors are that the power of Switch 2 is somewhere around that of the equivalent of a Steam Deck. Some say it's a little bit more powerful, some say it's basically equivalent, some also say that it's just below the power. Either way, if Final Fantasy VII truly does come to Switch, this is the sort of experience you can expect from the system. Who knows though, there might be some further special optimizations made by both Nintendo and Square Enix to get this game running a little bit better, and if they can somehow up the clarity, that would be massive bonus points. Supposedly, there is an official Nintendo patent that suggests that Switch 2 is going to use some form of DLSS AI upscaling. And if that's the case, yeah, that would absolutely mean that the clarity on Switch 2 would be so much better. Now, if you do have the ROG Ally X, then you're probably going to see some better performance here due to that system having a slightly more powerful processor and GPU compared to Steam Deck. However, it is cool to know that you can have a completely portable, quite playable Final Fantasy VII Rebirth experience. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to slap that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. A big thank you as always to my wonderful patrons. I hope you're all collectively having a fantastic day, and we'll talk again real soon.